I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor, University of East London. Welcome to the Docklands campus, especially for those of you for whom it's a first visit. I'm delighted this evening to be hosting this event at UEL, and particular welcome to our three rappers who are joining us this evening. Dee from Egypt, Yassin Al-Saman, otherwise known as the Narcissist, from Canada, and Awesome from Libya. So this evening, really interesting session where we'll discuss how rap has influenced and shaped recent revolutions in the Middle East. During the so-called Arab Spring, from Algeria to Yemen to Syria and to Egypt, we saw a whole wave of protests spread across the Middle East, and reforms were made and governments were overthrown. And I guess it's really interesting also to discuss and consider how social media played a role and was an active ingredient, arguably, in facilitating that social change. The unrest and the fight for democracy, more importantly in this region, still continues. That's why it feels particularly special tonight that we have this first in a series of events with individuals who themselves have played and continue to play a key role culturally in the Middle East and the changes that are taking place there. And I, for one, look forward to hearing their different perspectives. I'll pass over in a moment to them, but I would like to thank, first of all, openDemocracy for their participation and support of this event. Dr. Nora Colton, the new Dean of the Business School, and Professor Phil Marfleet from the School of Law and Social Sciences. So it's nice to see two schools working together on this event and organising and bringing what is a really significant and important event to UEL. So enjoy the evening, and thanks very much for coming.
Good evening, guys. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming today. My name is Hazem Akila, and I'm not the rapper today. These guys are. But I am a fan and I am a hip-hop enthusiast. Before we start, I would like to thank openDemocracy for putting this together. I'd also like to thank East London University for hosting such an interesting event. I'd like to thank Rosemary Batchelor, editor of openDemocracy, for her tireless efforts. John Jogan, Pro Vice Chancellor, for his support. Professor Phil Marfleet, who worked hard to make this event a success. Nora Colton, Dean of Business School, for being the spark behind the series. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank Bassam and Mazen for promoting this event and inviting me on board. I have the pleasure to present our artists tonight. Left, Ibn Thabit. We have in the middle the Narcissist. You would like me to call him Yassin.
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
At the end, we have Dee. They will introduce themselves further on. Today we would like to discuss an industry which has long been oppressed by the Arab political powers. Or rather, if there is an industry at all. Arab hip-hop has been attracting more people and media attention as the revolutions broke through in the Arab world. There is a lot to touch on and explore as the reasons why this could be happening. As Deep was telling me earlier, there is a difference on how Arab rap was perceived by the communities before the revolutions and after. So what exactly has changed? Could we be witnessing the rise of Arab rap and hip-hop? What is the future of Arab rap? What role is the Arab rap playing in the diaspora? There are a lot of questions to be answered and a lot to learn from. We will be taking questions on Twitter as well, and hope you have enough time to answer everyone. Any questions that you may have are welcome. And now I will pass you over to our first guest, Sabit.
Testing. Do you want me to answer?
Would you like to introduce yourself and maybe briefly say something? I'm sure
I recently retired from hip hop, so spitting a verse is out of the question. I guess I'll give a long version introduction that I haven't done for anybody today. I guess my story actually starts with my father. He came up from a village which to this day does not have electricity or running water in a petro state like Libya. My father, he did not know a time where he didn't work, he tells me. He was a shepherd when he was as far back as he can remember. He cannot remember a time where he was not around sheep. Fast forward to 1976, 1977, he had moved, finished his high school in Tripoli. He actually graduated top of the entire country in engineering, and he was sent abroad first to the States to do his master's in engineering, and then his PhD later. My father was an active, a religious person, I guess, a Muslim obviously. And Gaddafi used to spend a lot of money on foreign intelligence, not to spy on other countries, but to spy on Libyan citizens and potential opponents living abroad. My dad wasn't actually really politically active until somebody had written a report about him that he was active Islamically, and they cut off his scholarship in the last 2 years of his completing his PhD. At that time, he didn't have much, really, but he worked 4 assistant professorships. He sold his car and refused to go back. And my mother, obviously, I was born in '85, and at the time that my mother was pregnant with me, like basically, my mom would tell me that she used to go into supermarkets with a calculator to figure out what she could afford in terms of diapers and groceries. The reason my father named me Awesome, it's from the name of one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. And the story, in short version, is that there was a companion of the Prophet from Medina who participated in one of the early skirmishes with the people of Mecca. He killed somebody from a very wealthy family. That family, or the mother of that person that this companion killed, promised reward, a treasure, to whoever would bring this person's head to her so that she could drink wine from him. So the story goes that the Prophet Muhammad had sent this companion, Asim ibn Thabit, on a scouting mission outside of Medina, and he was ambushed by a tribe, and basically they held him behind a boulder. They tried to get close to kill him, they couldn't, and they started basically negotiating with him, telling him to come to their protection, and he refused. Some of the people that were with him did, and they surrounded him. They killed him from afar with bow and arrow. They came to retrieve the body. He was covered in bees. They waited for nightfall for the bees to go home, and the body was washed away, never recovered. So that's where I got the alias from. I started rapping in 2008. I've been going to Libya regularly since my childhood, so my ability to speak the language is fluent, even though I was raised in Vancouver, Canada. And I used to go in and actually distribute my music by hand, by CDs. I tried, the internet didn't work. It was heavy censorship. YouTube was blocked in Libya actually almost 2 years before the Arab Spring began. So most of my music was distributed pre-revolution and actually post-revolution by Bluetooth on phones. But really, in terms of distribution, I didn't get much attention until after the revolution in Libya started, and more particularly in the areas that had been freed. think that suffices as an introduction.
Thank you.
So, my name is Yassine. I'm originally Iraqi. My parents are from Basra in Iraq. I was born in Dubai. And to give you a metaphor for my life, the home that I was born into is now a gas station. That suffices to describe what my life is all about. I live in Montreal, Canada. I started rapping in 2000 with a group called Euphrates with 2 other Iraqi producers, and I was the MC in the group. I went solo in 2005, and I've been making music ever since. I'm also a professor at Concordia University in Montreal. I teach in the Fine Arts Department, specifically teaching a hip-hop course on social science and identity struggles. I think the best way to kind of shorten my life story would be to give you a verse about it, so I have to pick one. It goes, first-hand experience, second-class citizen, third-person hurt, 4 fan member immigrant, 5-sided pentagon, 666 presidents, all led me to never forget where the 7 lives, the prince of poets, delivery, relevance, the baddest kid, madness with soliloquy and militants. I'm in the room between the skeletons and elephants, similar to Arabic calligraphy and lettering, my word is born. Like speaking to a friend, you see the deepest of serenity. Sleeping with the enemy, the speed is just the end of me. On the roads like a fender. They don't get the picture, still rendering. I stay on like my wedding ring in reverence of many things, and never will it ever bring the heaven that we leveling around. With sound patient, though I don't talk slow. I know we're groundbreaking like a pothole.
How you doing, guys? My name is Deep. My original name is Muhammad Deep. I'm born in Cairo, raised in the Gulf, similar to Yassine's story right here. You know, one of the millions of Egyptians that fled their country, looking for opportunities abroad, because the situation in Egypt wasn't that good in the 80s. I moved back to Cairo 2005, and this is when I decided to write in Arabic. I was always writing in English before. And it felt right to just address the people in their own language. So I always describe my experience in hip-hop as a personal one, you know. It's away from the political side that you might think, you know, the social. It starts with a personal experience, and you just reflect what's in the streets, whether it's political, whether it's social, whether it's anything, you know, that you see that you want to change. And there were a lot of things that I saw and I wanted to change. I addressed all these issues in my rhymes, you know, starting from corruption, sexual harassment, how women in our, you know, in the Middle East are treated, things that I didn't understand moving back to Egypt, which is my country. You know, that's not the Egypt I was brought up in. That's not the Egypt that I see in the movies. That's not the Egypt that I hear, you know, from grandma stories, telling me about the great old days. So that nostalgia came up in my lyrics. I touched on issues such as identity. You know, I did a song called Biladi, where I describe all the different cities, all the different governorates in Egypt, starting from Aswan all the way down south to Sinai. A lot of people in Egypt don't even know these cities, you know, what they're famous of or what they're known of. But it was my duty to, in a way, find out where I'm coming from and also tell the people that have been living there all their lives what this country's about and where it can be heading, you know, the potential of Egypt. That's pretty much it as introduction. Give a verse in Arabic, but we got some Arabs here, right? في البداية كنت واخد المزيكا انها هواية لحد ما اكتشفت الموهبة جوايا. كلامي مراية لأحداث عشتها، بدأت على قدي من وقتها وأنا بعلى في المستوى. فن الطبخ عايز وقت، أسلوبي استوى، هم والضغط والفقر، شعبي عايز دوا. كله في الهوا سوا بس الهوا مش هوانا، لو حليم كان عايش مش هيكون في روتانا. فتح عينك اوعى تغمضها، ولا أنت طالع تتفرج على فيلم عرض أول مرة. أنا مش ديكتاتور، الديك دكتور، في قسم البيت تخصص فولكلور، شيك الديكور بتاع المسرحية الكوميدية، زكية زكريا والعصابة المفترية، سيا سيا واه سيا. أغنية عصرية زي منير مصرية 100.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for the great introduction. I mean, the mic doesn't even work anymore.
Reject, reject.
Alright, thank you guys for the great introduction. That was kind of unexpected. Alright, we're going to be receiving live feed from Twitter, and if you have any questions, you can also ask our speakers and artists today. I would like to kick off the first question. Obviously, you guys are passionate about what you do, and I can't find any other reason why would you do it, because there's no money in the industry. And what is driving you to rap and send your message to the world? I mean, what's in it for you guys?
That's why I retired.
You know, I started rapping at an early age as a hobby, and I went to university at the same time and did my BA in communication studies, so I was learning to sound engineer while I was writing and recording freely for the hell of it. And during that time, my parents would say, okay, 2 more years, habibi, Allah, khalas. And then it became something that was self-sustainable, and you know, not only was it bringing in money, it was bringing in a form of awareness, more importantly, to our people and our experience as Arabs in the West. Which eventually, you know, brought me to different places that expanded the music beyond just being hip-hop music, you know. Being able to do a TEDx talk in Dubai or write an op-ed for a news network, you know, these things were birthed out of the music. And I think music was just a platform to introduce people to our experience, as diverse as it is. So I do it because, you know, because of this kind of thing, because we're able to express what we've been through, what we're going through, and what we hope to go through in the future, individually, but also as a community, which is the more important point.
I was a banker for 6 years. Yes, I did wear a tie and suit every day to work, 9 to 5, Excel sheets, you know, but that was over. I quit my job last December. Yes, thank you. And I feel this is the right time to be, you know, putting all your efforts into addressing your people, talking to your people, especially during these times. So it just feels good to be making music. Since day one, I've been doing this just because it felt right. You know, I didn't know how I can make money out of it. I didn't know how I can be successful in it. It started as a hobby, kind of like, you know, Yassine's story. But then you start seeing ways of how you can be successful. You know, how you can make money out of your music, and it just becomes, you know, great to have an audience such as here in London just appreciating your art. At the same time, you get the same love when I go back home, you know. It's good to be doing this music right now.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Obviously, like my life story, my dynamic is a little bit different. I actually can see very clearly how I can make money. Libya, in terms of like musically speaking, the market is just like almost, I would say, starving for any kind of form of expression. A lot of people that there's a lot of artists, not just like rap artists, but they made a name, like musicians in Libya that made their name during the revolution. Like I'm talking specifically about the Libyan revolution. And they're out there, they're doing shows now, and they're doing really well. They're making lots of money, like even like in terms of record sales, which worldwide it's people are not buying the music anymore. But like I mean, even like bootleg CDs, like in hustlers on the streets and that kind of thing, it's huge in India because this was not existent before. You know, there was music, and there was Libyan music as well, but there's been like almost a huge charge, especially a huge demand for like revolutionary themed music. You know? So, but for me, like it was never about getting into it. For me, like I just saw music as, obviously I must have felt like I was able to do something with my music, and I must have had the ability. I know that I had the ability to rap, but for me it was just that I recognized it as a medium of expression that could reach people in ways. In ways, it was the only way that I could do it, actually. And I'm sure many of you are aware that in Libya, prior to the revolution, you could definitely not have a protest about anything. And you could not, obviously, you write articles that are critical of the government. I can explain this by examples. There was a writer who used to write for a state newspaper called the Zahf al-Akhdar, which the green zealots, Gaddafi, to honor Gaddafi's green book. And this person once wrote about corruption. He was a hardcore pro-Gaddafi writer for a state newspaper. And this happened just a couple of years ago. He wrote an article about corruption. And his body was found in the sea, and all of his fingers were found to be chopped off when they recovered his body, which is obviously a message to anybody else who wants to write about corruption, that we will cut off your fingers and kill you. So for me, the music, and obviously being anonymous, I took a decision to be anonymous when I started, for not even for my own safety, because I just distributed the music on my own, with CDs and via Bluetooth whenever I visited Libya, which was usually on a yearly basis. The point was always to deliver a message, you know, and I could have made a decision to go try and do something commercial before or after, but I never could, because that was never what I wanted to do.
So we got the first question here on Twitter
Nice.
from
That's pretty good.
obviously someone that doesn't want to be known for some reason. But it's a question for Deep, and the question goes: Deep said his family left Egypt because it wasn't good in the 80s, and he went back in 2005. Wasn't 2005 even worse?
Yes, it was. Which is why I decided to, address the people as soon as possible. I came back at a very intense time. 2005 was the year that Mubarak got re-elected for the 6th time. He didn't get re-elected, basically. It was all rigged, of course. And the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, getting seats in the parliament for the first time in history and all that. And so it was a very hard time. I could have decided, I don't want to deal with this stuff. I'll go back to Dubai, live a good life and enjoy my time. But I decided to stick in there because I had some hope. I don't know. I'm an optimist, Call me naive, call me something, but I think if you believe that what you're doing is actually affecting society on a small level, there's a ripple effect. That can change society. Even the town that I'm living in. If I affect the town that I'm living in, my town can affect other towns.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, again.
I have a question to Mohammed and Deep. Could you elaborate a bit on the role that music played in the Egyptian revolution? Because on the one hand you had former pop stars that spoke out against the revolution, and then you also had pop stars that were in favor, that in certain songs that became part of the revolution. Yeah, maybe on the role of music in general, but also your own position.
Sure. Well, the music promoted before our revolution, pre-Jan 25, was very shallow music. Pop songs, Habibi music, love songs. And we experienced more than love. We experienced unemployment, we experienced corruption, we experienced, gender inequalities and all that stuff. And no one was talking about it. And I always wondered why, why isn't anyone talking about it? Well, it's obvious, because the state media is not going to support you if you talk, if you badmouth them, if you talk, if you criticize them and stuff. So it was evident that in our revolution, everyone knew who was pro-Mubarak and who was anti-Mubarak. All the pop stars came out, on TV telling the protesters to go back home, and the situation is gonna solve itself by itself. I don't know how is it gonna solve itself. People like Tahrir Hosni, I don't know if you guys listen to this guy. You know, unfortunately, in my country, a lot of people did, because that was the only thing available on the radio, on the TV. That's what they see every day. They don't have any other outlets. And now, right now, the power to the underground movement is overwhelming. I'm not talking about just hip hop, other types of music too. We have a big rock music, rock movement coming up. You know, we have a reggae movement, hip hop, electro. We have street artists now. You know, if you go walk down in Cairo, you have all over the walls. We have amazing street art. Where was this before the revolution? You know what I mean? People broke the fear.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Once the revolution's over, what role and responsibility do you think you have towards our society? I mean, right now your music is all about, you know, corruption and freedom of speech and pro-unity. What's next from you then, once everything's settled?
You guys are picking on me. I mean, right now, I'll always have things to talk about. Just because the National Democratic Party, Mubarak's party, is out, doesn't mean that you know, the Muslim brothers are going to be better. I mean, just because they're called Muslim, you know, they can be corrupt too. You know what I mean? And I will criticize them in public in my songs. I broke the fear when I participated in the revolution. So I will be watching their steps since they're the majority, and that's a problem with any majority in parliament. Everyone was watching their next steps. So I think they will try to avoid people like us. You know what I mean? But I mean, by focusing on the main things such as education, you know, healthcare, getting rid of corruption, they won't like stop hip hop all of a sudden. Hip hop can't be existing in society. They can't do that. You know what I mean? So I will always have things to talk about.
I think the people want to hear from you.
About this question?
Yeah.
I mean, not to be cynical, but there is no government that doesn't have corruption in it. And I think, you know, we started writing and making music before all this stuff that's going on now. So our music is a reflection of our everyday life, beyond just the politics, you know. I know Deep's music specifically speaks to his personal experience a lot, and he shares a lot of his earlier life in his music, and so do I. So I think that there's only going to be more things to talk about now that things are more open, and it's like a can of worms, you know. There's so many more issues that will come out into the open, I think.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that what you want to answer?
I retired.
Who's a charity?
You're here now, so.
Talking about the music, like, what am I going to talk about now? I still plan on being like.
What's your opinion? I mean, you were in the industry and you probably know better on what do you think hip hop will become? What's coming out of hip hop?
Well, I guess I should speak about what I know best, and really that's, I was going to say mostly the North African rapper, like rap hip-hop scene is what I follow the closest, but I'll leave Egypt out of it just because we have a resident expert. But in Libya right now, like before the revolution, hip-hop was just whatever, you know, it was just like this, you know, almost like a punk movement, you know, like a way to piss off your parents kind of thing. Like you listen to it or you dress with baggy clothes or whatever. I'm talking about specifically about Libya, and to a certain extent Tunisia, which has a really rich, you know, hip-hop culture. But
all over there, well, that was the view, you know. In the early 90s when we were coming up listening to hip-hop, it was, you know, I would be the Ajnabi, you know, in the Khadija, and although I'm very Arabi, you know, just because of the way that I dress. And I'm sure people in this room have experienced that here with their family members because of either the way they dress or they speak. And that line is being, you know, shattered, I think, with our generation.
well, going back to the revolution,
Later.
a lot of rappers have just kind of like I mean, I actually got an email from like a 15-year-old. Like this is the hyperbole. like a 15-year-old kid from Zawiya. His father was actually killed during the revolution. He told me his personal story, and he said, "So how do we become a big rapper like you?" And I didn't know how to respond to him, because I mean, a lot of the youth, like that I've seen, that are trying to make it in Libya, because there's two veins. You can go into the whole 50 Cent vein, which does not work in Libya, and it does not work in Tunisia. It hasn't really taken off, you know? Even though there are rappers that do that and they make money and that kind of thing. And the rappers that get political, like after I sort of kind of bowed out, like the next biggest thing, a personal friend of mine, his name is MC Swat. He's very political. He's supercharged. Like he's a political activist slash rapper, and really more a political activist. And it comes out in his music. And he's basically, you know, the guy that everybody wants to listen to right now. And just like for people that have heard more about the Tunisian rap, El General, obviously, if you guys follow Tunisian rap, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, even though I'm being like on live stream or whatever. I actually think there are better Tunisian rappers than him, but he blew up because he was so timely, and he was speaking about like issues, political issues that mattered and that Tunisians felt, you know. And even though like I think like stylistically there are better Tunisian rappers, but he came up huge because he just spoke about the right issue at the right time, and people that didn't even listen to hip hop, they would hear that message and they would feel it. You know, I felt a lot of Libyans felt my music, and like I'm not even like youth, like older people, like grandmothers, not even mothers. You know, were thanking me for what I was doing, you know, because they could I guess recognize and appreciate what I was doing, like the message, you know.
She had her hand up. I didn't want to say you.
Sorry. I was just wondering whether you saw the invention of, or whether you saw a relationship between technology and young people, and the availability of open source software, and actually making hip hop and listening to it, the accessibility of being able to do that.
My answer might surprise you.
Yeah.
No, not in Libya, not at all, actually. The Libyan revolution, like in Libya, it's a small country anyways. YouTube had been blocked for like almost, I think, 2 years. Same thing in Tunisia, actually. And like I said, like even distributing my music before the revolution was on a really small scale, and after it was only in the free areas that I could really, like my popularity had really skyrocketed, I would say. But in Libya, no, because, and similar thing happened in Egypt in the early days of the revolution. As the revolution got going, internet was completely shut down. Phone lines were completely shut down. You couldn't even put somebody on the line and have them hear anything. And really, like the more traditional things, like radio, for example, radio waves that would make it into Gaddafi controlled areas, that was the way to kind of get that, like any kind of messages out. Not so much really, like Facebook and Twitter, I think had a much bigger impact in Tunisia, where Ben Ali was caught by surprise almost, and they did not really, explore oppressive and repressive ways until later on, as things got really wrong. You know?
So what software do kids use, or what software were you using to make?
In Libya, like internet penetration is still really low. There's about 300,000 users, like internet, like regular internet users in Libya for a population of about 5.6 million. So it's really small. Things, like I said, mostly really radio, and then later when the revolutionary TV stations were launched, and really just the hustlers selling CDs on the streets. You know, maybe you can share like what happened.
Actually, in Egypt, the internet was one of the tools how we won the revolution. I remember I was getting my like minute-to-minute update of where to be, which area in the square, where to avoid, which street to avoid, because there were cops there protecting the area. So I was getting my daily feed from Twitter. I remember actually the first day that I joined the revolution, Al Jazeera just started talking about an uprising in Egypt. A couple of protesters in Tahrir Square. That's on Jan 25, by the way. And that was it. So I opened my Twitter account, and everyone was just like, telling people to come down to the square, this is the right time, and this is when I went down. So I remember when Mubarak cut the internet, the phone lines and the internet lines, this caused a mass outrage in Egypt, and that's why everyone went down to the streets on the 28th of January. I don't know if you guys have been following the events, but Jan 28th was the day where people marched down from all over the cities in Egypt to Tahrir Square with no internet, no phone lines. I remember that day, I met up with my friend at his place. You know, no one has mobiles, but we just had a feeling that we were going to be there at my friend's place, all together, waiting to go to Tahrir together, you know what I mean? So yes, I do believe that the internet was one of the tools.
Did you mean how did they make their music?
Well, like both, because I teach music here, and I work in the studios, and my students use Fruity Loops.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my students also work with open source software to generate beats to actually rap to. You know, and I was interested in how, you know, what software do you actually use, or do young people use, that's free and freely available on cheap computers like PCs? Did you necessarily have now?
I mean, Fruity Loops is one. You know, I use Sonar to mix just because I learned it. Audacity in these programs, but mostly to spread the visual element was where I used most open source stuff. You know, I use Twitter and Facebook to, for example, for the video Alhamdulillah that I did with Shadi Mansour, who's from London. We did a song for Gaza and Basra, basically. And we put a call out online for people to send us portraiture shot in a certain way with a certain camera. And we ended up getting footage from Jeddah, from you know, places in Australia, all over Europe, all over the Middle East, and that's how we created our video. So to involve the community through these social networks and media is the way that we've, and doing that in a way, you know, people start posting it on their walls and Facebook, and then their friends start posting it, and it becomes a bit of a viral video that way. So you can use those platforms to get your music out to people. I remember when we put out January 25th, Deeb actually tweeted me from Egypt saying I just heard it, and the Arabian Nights boys were tweeting me from Tahrir saying they're playing your song in certain parts of Tahrir Square. So, you know, it goes full circle, and that's the whole purpose of us making it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add on to that question?
Because now I understood your question, right? There is one song that I wrote about the revolution called Stand Up Egyptian, Oumi Masri, and how the song came together is I posted an old song, old Egyptian song by a famous Egyptian singer called Said Darwish. That was in the 1920s. He was telling, you know, Egyptians, Oumi Masri, and Stand Up Egyptian, and that's the 1920s. So I posted that link on my Facebook wall, and a friend of mine who's also a musician from Lebanon, he saw that link. He's like, send me that track, send me the MP3 link. So I sent it to him, and he comes back to me 2 days later with a beat. And he's like, how about we make a song called Oumi Masri, you know? So yes, we do work together, you know, we connect online and all that.
Yeah, so it's really important. Yeah.
Okay guys, we have a question here, and I think we'll just dedicate like 2 minutes question each, because I think everybody wants to.
Have them then ask one specific person. I think it would be the best way to do it.
Alright, let's take this question first.
Why don't you ask in groups of three? I just wanted to say, I don't speak Arabic, so I think Indian. I could feel the passion in your voice and words. The first point. Second point is that obviously rap is a very special music. My question is, do you draw upon musical traditions from other parts of the world? Because I come from India and we do have this traditional music. Exactly the way you sang and but similar. And I can assure you, if you do visit India, Indians will be delighted to hear it.
I've visited India too, visited Goa, but that's not considered India, right? Yeah, it's like the commercial side there. Yeah, it's like our Sharm el-Sheikh. But yes, I think I use, I mean, that song Masrah Deep is a B.B. King sample, you know. Jay-Z used Big Pimpin'. He used that Big Pimpin' sample. You guys know that song, Big Pimpin'? That's originally Abdul Halim, an old Egyptian singer. I remember playing that song, You know, when it first came out, and then my mom walks into the room like, oh, Tahrir. He stole it, you know? So he got sued for it. Actually, the Egyptian company lost the case because Timbaland used, I don't know, a certain seconds, 8 seconds or something, you're allowed to use that. But anyways, so yes, I'm inspired by world music, you know, I listen to a lot of African music, listen to a lot of, you know, Brazilian music, cumbia from South America, and hip-hop is all about rhythm, you know. I don't care whether if it's coming from Africa, if it's coming from Asia, if it has rhythm and soul, then yes, I'll use it.
Okay, we'll take a few questions, maybe 2 or 3, and then we can answer. I think she has her, and then we'll have him next. Would you like to go?
Should I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. I just want you to comment about the shift in the 60s and 70s. War music or revolutionary music was very different. خلي السلاح صاحي and so on. And when we see now in this revolution, more there's hip hop, there's rap and other things like that. So I just want you to comment on this shift.
Okay, thank you. And the next question? Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. So mainly for Glenn, that you all know about rap.
They've been said.
So you all come from backgrounds of like you've got knowledge of suppression and experience of that firsthand. How do you feel about UK grime music over here and our like revolution where we're about Nick and Trainers? And secondly, how do you feel about the negative impacts of rap in the UK and America of the glorified gang life and ghettoisation?
Okay, I'll answer it both anyway.
And grime the next as well. Especially about UK grime, they think they've got something to moan about here. And you guys have seriously seen like the negative impacts of what government can do.
Yo, I roll deep with low key from out here.
I'm going to answer it that way. Though. I'm not going to have anything to say.
I know, but I mean it's real. You know?
Can we answer the lady first and then we'll go?
Sorry? Oh,
Okay. Okay, if you answer the lady's question first.
I think, you know, the difference in the music is that our music now is just simply more immediate and more there's a lot more voices coming out at once, you know? And the internet has definitely facilitated the spread of the music. It made it a lot easier to share different opinions, whereas back then, you know, it was either through live performance or through a gramophone recording of whatever live performance there was, you know. When you listen to Kulthum or even Abdul Halim, a lot of it was live recording, where now it's live recording in our bedrooms or our studios, and we put it out on the internet a lot faster, you know. So that's, I think, the only difference. Otherwise, the content and the things we're talking about are humanity. So I don't see a difference in the content much, you know. And when it comes to the
Can I ask a question again?
yes.
So you coming from a background of suppression and knowledge from happening in the Middle East, how do you feel about UK grime in England, about how they feel about against our government and how they think they had a revolution and how they went on new kind of trainers and the effect that those sorts of people back on YouTube has an effect on younger people and about kind of this American kind of culture of ghettoisation and gangs and selling, thinking you can make money out of doing it or selling drugs and this kind of thing. When it's not really the right impression for some people. I know you're talking politically, so how do you feel about the people over here that think they've got something to prove?
First of all, like, generally speaking, I'll answer generally and then I get specific. Like, music is a form of expression, obviously. You know, and the experiences, whatever you experience, that shapes your music. What shaped my experiences are things that are very different than what anybody really could, unless I express it. I feel like a lot of things, unless I express them musically, I would not have been able to reach people. Other people, they feel things like like obviously, everybody has a musical. There are a lot of rappers out there that I dislike, and yet I learn from them. Why? Because they express things in a way that can actually make you listen to it, even if you don't like the message, even if you disagree with the message. You actually can hear it, and you can actually appreciate the art form. And actually, there are a lot of artists that have said things that have made me just dislike them as a person. But still, or maybe even dislike the song, but still, I can't help but borrow from them. And for myself personally, I think I put this somewhere on one of my websites. that like the biggest influences that I had, two of them are Tupac and Biggie. I love Tupac, you know, and I borrow a lot. I basically take in his style, whatever I can, and I felt like he had a lot more deeper things to say than Biggie. No offense to Biggie fans. Biggie though, I actually borrowed more stylistically from, you know, even though like I cannot, like he had different experiences. Obviously he came up, he you know, a difficult life, you know, and but the thing is, once he made it, he was doing the whole like he invented the whole flossing culture, you know, like the whole money in the cars and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? And that was basically the life that he was living. And now I actually proudly say that I disagree with that lifestyle, you know? But stylistically, you had to listen to it. You couldn't help it, you know? You would just hear stuff like B-I, double G-I-E, you know? And you just be like, wow, that sounds cool. You know what I mean? And I had a song where I did that. I basically spelling my name. Like, I was like, that is so cool, I have to do that. You know what I mean?
If I can just address the question about grime music here in the UK and you know, you saying people stealing sneakers and I don't think that it's fair. I don't think that it's fair to say that one struggle is bigger than the other, in the sense that I believe that there might be more violent struggles or more oppressive regimes, but every struggle is important. Every struggle that is a human struggle is just as important as the next one. And you know, they didn't just steal sneakers. You know, people like Jody McIntyre got dragged in the streets by the Metro cops here in London during the protests, and many a rapper got stereotyped just by being a rapper, and the media spinning it on its back and making it seem like they're doing bad things, when really, if you read their lyrics, they're clarifying situations that are very real in the street. Now, whether you're talking about the gun-toting rappers in the States or, you know, the extra violent braggadocio that's in hip-hop music, that's a reflection of society, you know? That's very present in our films, it's very present in our news, it's very present in our everyday life, let alone in the powers of the systems that surround us, from the police to government. So you can't really blame the rappers for that. You have to look at society and see the societal ills that create these situations and make people glorify them, you know? So grime music is a positive movement as long as you use it in a way that could shift the narrative.
I agree with you, yeah, that's a good point. What about the sort of people that...
I think we have to take other questions. I'm sorry.
Let him speak.
There are a lot of other people.
I've got listening to quite a lot, and I just kind of follow the whole kind of fashion. But for kids around, I saw a lot of kids around me that follow it to the letter, and they think they're so hard to follow it, and like, a lot of them talk about selling drugs to make money, lots of people profit it. Do you think that's really a good message for our younger people?
No, but that again is a societal ill. You know, when there's school shootings that occur in the States and in Canada, the news tends to point to these people being depressed outcasts that nobody respected in school, hence they came back and shot kids. Instead of looking at the fact that bullying is a big problem in society from the top down. And violence and guns being accessible and drugs being accessible to youth. So it's in the hands of not only the people in the streets, but in the hands of our governments as well, and the hands of our families as well, and how they raise us, you know.
Thank you. The lady at the back.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say, first of all, how proud I am of you guys. I'm half Egyptian, half Libyan, grew up in North America, and I'm just really all through my identities are really proud of you guys, and good luck doing your thing. But my question is about women Arab rap and hip-hop artists, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that most of the kind of rap and hip-hop artists in the Arab world tend to be men, and I wondered, is it kind of an issue that the audience isn't really demanding it, or perhaps the template for women Arab artists has to be kind of a H-O-F-E, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, you know, I had the privilege of doing my thesis on Arab hip-hop and really researching and meeting people, and that's actually how I met people like Deeb, and this came together, and the strongest voices we have in our movement are the women. Whether you're talking about Shadia Mansour or you're talking about Malika, there are many a DJ that are women in our scene, producers as well that are women, It's just they, you know, sometimes don't stand out because of family pressures or, you know, pressures from internal pressures within their families, you know. But I know many of them that are very, very powerful, and hopefully their voice will be heard in the coming years.
Since you mentioned Malika, we really should have tried to bring her out. Right? Yeah, because a lot of the things that she talks about, she's a Lebanese rapper, Lebanese Algerian rapper. She talks about a lot of the issues, so she had to deal with that. Obviously, we didn't have to. We're all, you know, men. And but she talks about the issues that, like being a girl and rapping, you know, and the kind of family pressures that she faced. She talks about that in her music. That's a theme. In my experience, like Libya, obviously, you must know, is a comparatively very traditional, very conservative society, and yet they Yassine said, they've had a very, very powerful role, even in a place as conservative as Libya, and even musically. There are right now on one of the many 10, 12 new Libyan TV stations that have kind of popped up after the revolution. I'm talking about Libya specifically. There are quite a few artists that, female artists, that are like wearing the hijab, the Islamic headscarf, and they're on TV like singing, you know. And this is something that perhaps before was you know, not really, I don't want to say frowned upon, but it was unheard of, because that's just the media types in Libya were not, you know, people that would wear hijab, for example, you know, and that's not really. I haven't felt that that's really been frowned upon. Speaking personally, to be honest with you, they're all new, like because like the environment in Libya, obviously, you couldn't make it anywhere in media unless you knew people. You know, it was not a talent thing. It was, you have to be pro-Gaddafi, and you had to know the right people, and you had to be from certain circles. In terms of rappers, I did a song about the role of women in the Libyan revolution specifically. It's called Martyrdom, or the Libyan woman. Actually, I'm sorry, it was called Innocence of the War, but the hook went like Martyrdom, which was Miss Revolution, and I spoke specifically about a lot of the things that they did. Before I did that, though, I put out messages on my Twitter and my Facebook to try and get people to collaborate with me. They kind of flaked on me, but there was a lot of interest from females in Libya to rap, which I was surprised. I wanted actually to collaborate with somebody, I just couldn't find, and I was willing actually to write the lyrics as well, but it just didn't work out, and I ended up doing it without somebody. But there was interest there, you know, and whereas, you know, like I guess the common wisdom would be that no, not in a country as conservative as Libya. So I was actually impressed by that.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, sorry. I want to share a personal story actually about that. I just remembered this. There's a YouTube video that is a famous singer now. His name is Salah Ghali. We collaborated a couple of times. And there's this little girl, like a 5-6-year-old girl. Like Salah Ghali did a show in Benghazi. I didn't know about it until I got to Benghazi, so I didn't take part in the show. But they brought this little girl on, and she knew my lyrics actually. She performed my song on stage with Salah Ghali, you know? And just before I flew out, actually, the day before I flew out, a friend of mine called me from Benghazi. He's like, guess who I'm with? It was actually the little girl. She wanted to talk to me, so that was actually really cute. They filmed her on, one of them filmed her on the iPhone. And she was like all like embarrassed, and she was talking to me by phone, and she was covering her eyes.
Thanks for sharing. So we'll take 2 or 3 more questions. So I think the young gentleman.
So I really like the music, but I try to, and I don't mean to be a douche by asking this question, but I have to ask it. I tried to invite a friend who's a PhD student here from the region, and he said Arab rap is cultural imperialism par excellence.
Wow.
So, and that's a criticism that I hear all the time, right? So how do you respond to that? How do you speak to that?
Tell him I have my master's degree. Let's just be as pretentious as he is.
No, but I mean, like, what's a substantive response? Because I can't say during the revolution when your song came out, during the Ghazza song, these are songs that particularly spoke to me, they moved me. But sort of sharing it with people who aren't you know, exposed to rap from the get-go, you find this resistance that this is, you know, this is not our music. So how do you respond to that?
Thank you. Let's take the second question and maybe the third question, and we'll let them answer that.
I think this one's really easy to answer on all of our behalf, so let's just bang it out real quick. I think hip-hop is engendered and really boxed in by the media, and when I say the media is very general, but its representation is both the chicken and the egg in a way. You know, who do you blame, the rappers or the people covering the rappers? So the general consensus is that hip-hop is ignorant, or hip-hop represents a minority group of people that are socially conscious, and then there's these other party animals on the side. But hip-hop is one of the most complex forms of communication as well as creativity, and something that borrows from not only Noam Chomsky, but it borrows from Chuck D, it borrows from Biggie, it borrows from all these different characters in society. So I would tell your friend to do his research before he judges, you know? Don't judge your CD by its cover, as we say.
Also, if you look at hip-hop, I mean, hip-hop was started by the Black American community, you know, in the US. Where did they come from? They came from Africa, okay? So tell your friend, I'm African, I can do the music. I know you're not, but I mean, مش قصدي حاجة، مش قصدي They do. I mean, I'm wearing jeans right now. Does it mean that, you know, I can't wear jeans because it's an American invention? I mean, come on, we're affected by each other, guys. Globalization, that word that you guys have been studying, you know, in economics and all that, come on. It is affecting us, you know. Yes, there are the bad side to it, but there's also the good side to it, you know. We always have to be learning from each other, taking the best things from each other, you know. Well, that's how I see it.
The PhD students tend to be cynical. No offense to anybody.
He's actually going to see you on Friday, I think, to support
We'll get him a VIP seat on stage.
Like, what was this beef exactly? That, like,
basically that it's and it's what you get.
The Arab revolutionaries should not be rapping because it's not for them. It's something foreign or anything like that.
Move on. I think your friend.
Sorry, was that the beef? I just want to know.
I think your friend should be bold.
Tweet us.
All right, the second question.
I was just wondering if you're when you're in Canada now, you've ever got a feeling of like itching to be back in Libya or Egypt?
I live in Tripoli.
I'm in Canada.
Or do you ever feel like you kind of practicing from a safe distance almost?
No, I mean, I go back to the East all the time. I go at least twice a year. And be it I go to the Gulf or I do shows with gentlemen in Beirut or in Amman or you know, many of our friends tour to Palestine, and it's a very back and forth relationship. And in no way do I say in my music that I'm going through that. It's more a reflection of my people that are going through it, and I'm very aware of my safe distance. And it's easy for me to say the things that I do say in my music. You know.
I wasn't a criticism, I was wondering if you missed it.
Yeah, I miss it terribly. Yeah, you know, I'm actually moving back in July to the region to start something a bit bigger than music. But I'm definitely going to be leaving Canada because the cold is getting to my bones at this point, and I mean that in many ways.
Thank you.
Just to answer, like, because I did grow up in Canada, and I visited Libya regularly, but for me, going back was a no-brainer. So, I guess in a way, to answer your question, yes, like, I was always itching to live there. So.
Okay, guys, we really need to keep going. So we're gonna take 3 more questions. The young gentleman.
This is for Yassine. What, like being Arab and being in the West and kind of you're expressing that feeling of being Arab in the West, yeah? What is your, and talking about your identity, like what's your aim? Is it to remind those people who might have never even been to the Middle East or to Arab countries, yeah? Is it to remind them of that? Or do you think it's to sort of create a new Western Arab kind of culture? What is it to you?
I'm a reflection of many people that exist who have the similar experience, whether we're talking about in the UK or Canada or the States or even the Khalij, you know. many an Arab has been displaced, whether through their parents or individually. So I think the identity that I speak about is very prevalent in our generation. It started maybe the generation before us and the generation before that, but many of us in our generation have that experience. You know, we grew up on Mickey Mouse as much as we grew up on Kulthum, you know? So it's very much this line that we tread in between the two. And I'm all about sharing with people what I've been through and what my father went through immigrating in the 80s because he had an Iraqi passport and wasn't able to promise his children a safer future, so he immigrated to Canada and struggled for years. So these are the things that I share that I'm sure many of people in this room have experienced and kind of relate to. And I think that in turn becomes a new identity that is, the beautiful thing about our new identity is that it has no shape. It's being shaped right now. There's no template for how we make this happen. So we're making it happen as we go now. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's in our hands, you know.
Do we have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, to what extent do you think hip-hop has a role to play in counterculture to the dominant, hegemonic control of culture within society by the ruling class? And how can that penetrate the ideas that are perpetuated through the ruling class? I mean, in terms of Egypt and Libya, how did hip-hop contribute significantly to creating that counterculture? Because here at UEL, we've got a ruthless management, we've got a complete lack of disregard for students and teachers. They've made mass redundancies and huge cuts. It's quite outrageous. I'm not trying to draw parallels between them and Gaddafi and Mubarak at all, but I'm just saying. We have our own fight on our hands here, and to see you guys here and be with you is inspirational to our fight and to our struggle. And we will continue that, and I was just wondering what words of inspiration you could give in relation to building the counterculture here at UEL.
I think you made new friends.
I think nowadays, in the early 2000s until now, everything is easily commodified. Everything, including a revolution. It becomes a product right away. In the States, for example, the Occupy movement immediately became a hashtag Occupy t-shirt. And it became something that was like, it lost meaning like this, you know? And the one thing about hip-hop is that it shapeshifts a lot. So it can become that hegemonic order and discourse that exists already, and then it can become something brand new at the same time, and do that simultaneously as well. So I think, you know, it's all up to the artist, the viewer, and the relationship between those two, and what kind of bridge we create with the community that we're speaking to, you know?
My answer might, I hope it doesn't disappoint you. I hope it inspires you, actually. For what I was doing, there was no possible way to communicate with Gaddafi or his thugs. In fact, as soon as I started doing what I was doing, I started to receive, I got used to receiving death threats, actually. But they didn't know who I was, so that's fine. Putting the mic down now and retiring, I'm working on another project with a lot of activist groups in Libya. And I know a lot of it, just being actively on the ground involved in the revolution, I got to know, or I knew people from before, some of whom are actually ministers in the NTC. And while I do not agree with many of their views, and some of the things that they're doing and how they're organizing things, right now in Libya we're experiencing something new for the first time ever, where I can actually sit down with people that are having a protest and listen to and take from what they're talking about, and then sit down with a minister or a member of the NTC and tell them, look, this is what's happening right now, what are you guys doing about it? Or what is your opinion about it? And it's actually, and I actually tell them that I disagree with them, and I might even have a close personal relationship with them, which is different, obviously. It's always different to speak to somebody that you know, even about issues that they might take offense to or whatever, but it won't be the same. It's never the same as when you're speaking to a complete stranger and saying, you're doing all of these things wrong. You know what I mean? And that's part of the reason why, like, my experience, my music was very explicit, very combative, like towards Gaddafi, because he literally left no other option. And anybody who followed the Libyan revolution knows that, unlike in other Arab countries, rather than start, with tear gas and rubber bullets, and even sniper fire, which they did employ that in Benghazi in the early days, Gaddafi went straight to anti-aircraft weapons. I mentioned this in the talk earlier, that maybe some of you weren't there. And people were picking up bodies, like pieces of bodies. So it's actually, the reason why I was saying it, and I hope I don't disappoint you, but you have here in the United Kingdom and other countries where you are able to, well, at least on paper, I don't know, to be honest with you, to have a civil conversation with somebody, or at least say what you have to say, and make your voice heard. It's something that's actually priceless, you know. And one of my idols, I'll just leave you with this, was Malcolm X, and he actually he said it many times and in many ways, that if you are not willing to die for freedom, then you really don't deserve to have it. And he lived in a different time, and he meant it in a different way, and his struggle was a very different struggle. But obviously it's very inspiring that somebody is willing to do so much just to be able to say what you just said, you know, without having to fear, water cannons or dogs being unleashed on you. So that's actually a really beautiful thing, and it's actually a really important thing.
Okay, let's take the question at the back. Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies if you addressed this before I came. I just wanted to say, do you address racism within music? Obviously, I know within Libya, African countries are mentioned, but there is...
Not just racism. For myself, I actually make a point of not just racism, but... Sorry.
Racism against Africans, and particularly Black Libyans, which is going on now.
This is absolutely... First of all, it's not true.
Okay.
It is actually not true. This is actually a vernacular...
Black people in cages being basically abused is not true. Have you seen this?
There are Arabs and Amazigh also in cages being abused.
Okay, but I'm just asking,
Look, listen. I actually specifically do. That's what I was going to say. I was actually going to say. And in fact, if you want to talk about any kind of animosity, the towns of Benolit and Nureddin and Jmel and Sirt, where Gaddafi was born in, people from those towns experienced a lot more, and Tawarra, which are actually incidentally black. Out of those 5 towns, though, Tawarra is the only one that's mostly black. And really, it's one of the sad externalities of any war anywhere. And this is something that I made a point of, in my own music specifically, of mentioning it over and over again. That I'm not, that torture and any kind of abuse and any kind of discrimination. And I made a specific point because if you want to talk about discrimination, Sirt, who actually, I don't want to get into the whole tribal thing and make everybody, or the Orientalists in here think that Libya is a very tribal country, but my tribe, I'm from more of the western regions. There's a branch of my tribe in Sirt where Gaddafi was born, and where he basically doled out a lot of his goodies. One of the most fiercely loyal places to him. But if you want to talk about discrimination, they should be the ones that Libyans should have the most animosity to. And I'm just speaking as as a Libyan on the ground, right? And I actually specifically mentioned it in the early days of the revolution. Don't say anything about a Sirtawi, because even a Sirtawi is one of us. They're a Libyan as well. And I made it. It was part of a conscious effort because I knew what the casualties of war were. And the thing is, this kind of thing happened on a grand scale in the opposite direction. If you're following what's happening, if you're following really closely what's happening though right now, there's a little bit of, not a little bit actually, a lot going on in the town of Kufa in the south east of Libya, where it's basically the media, the domestic media was calling it, a tribal thing, whereas basically the tribes down there are darker skinned. They consider themselves to be Arabs, but to anybody in here, most people in here, they would look like blacks. But really what it was is pro-Gaddafi and anti-Gaddafi, and across tribal lines and across lineage. And the racism went both ways, by the way. I don't know if anyone here is familiar of the term Amazigh. Does anyone here know what an Amazigh is? Mostly known as the Barbars. Abdullah Sanusi, who, again, another person, he was the Gaddafi's chief of intelligence, and was indicted as one of the folks. Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam, and Abdullah Sanusi were supposed to be tried in the International Criminal Court. He's actually, to a lot of people in here, he would look like he was black. And he actually said on record, I will wipe out the barbers. There will not be something called the barber. And barbers actually, they have their own kind of look. They're more like white skin, that kind of thing. But I mean, these are the kind of stories that I feel that, you know, and one of the reasons why I really don't like to talk to journalists is that they're looking for stories. And either there's always a slant, either on the right or the left side, and they actually want to make something of this, you know. And the last thing
migrants that don't maybe speak the language that they're living there, is, I mean, they're not tribal. There's no kind of difference between the two. They're just.
Oh, check this out. This is an interesting thing you might find surprising. The town of Tawarla. If you want to talk about racism, that would probably be the one that people would use as a hyperbole, because Tawarla is right next to Masrata, which was under siege basically for the entire period. If you were following the Libyan Revolution. Most of the people of Tawarla have not been able to go back. Not because there's an explicit policy to not allow them to go back, but because it's armed anarchy right now in Libya, okay? However, everyone in Masrata knows about a handful of Tawarri youth from Tawarla, they're black, and they're all they all speak Arabic actually, that left Tawarla to participate with the Masratis against the Gaddafi forces. In fact, in the early days, there weren't really weapons to use in Masrata. Jordanians and Egyptians, especially Egyptians, actually, I'm not saying that because Deeb is here, were repairing old rifles so that they could use them against the Gaddafi forces. In fact, even where I was, there were a lot of Algerians and Tunisians who participated in the revolution. In the brigade that I joined, I actually joined the revolutionaries in a media role in the summer. We had a Tunisian come from the capital, leave his cushy job, and actually take up arms and participate with us. So I think a lot of these stories, the untold stories, you're not going to hear, but the ones that try to paint things in a certain way that the media might like or might latch onto, and something that you might be sensitive towards because you're black. You know, I'm speaking straight up. You know, you obviously that kind of thing affects you more.
To be unhappy when you see people in cages, whether you're black or not. I'm sure any people in here.
Of course not. No, I would never condone that. I would never condone that. And in fact, the thing is, it is an anarchy right now. You actually, like one of the terms that really pissed, the term rebel never pissed me off. Anything that you can say about the revolution is, but when you say NTC rebels, that actually makes me mad when I read that in headlines, specifically because we are not NTC rebels. We do not belong to the NTC. We never did. You know, on the ground. One last thing I want to say, on the ground, we did not receive a penny from the NTC. People came out with their own cars, they funded it themselves, private money, and they had no control over it, and still do not have full control over a lot of the people that have gone Israel.
Can I say one thing?
I'll say one thing.
I had that flag before the revolution started.
I'll say one thing. Arabs hate each other but love a martyr. There's a lot of racism going on in the Middle East, just like there's a lot of racism going on here. And it's obviously a prevalent thing in society that gets opened up when society gets opened up. And I believe that these things may be true or untrue, and it's all about subjective experience. I can't tell you directly, but there is a lot of racism in the Middle East, just like there's a lot of racism here, you know.
Sorry to cut the debate, guys.
Yeah, we do, of course.
We only have time for one question now, so we're going to take the young lady's question.
Actually, it follows on what you were saying about martyrdom. My question is specifically about martyrdom to the three of you. There's been this emergence of martyr pop recently, post the revolutions, particularly in Tunisia and Egypt. There's lots of videos online, particularly pop videos, using images of the martyrs.
What do you mean by pop videos?
Yeah, well, kind of splicing videos with rhythms, but with images of the martyrs. And there was an interesting conversation, really interesting this week, started by Monkey on Twitter. And he was asking, to what extent are the martyrs of the revolution national property? When do they become, or do they become symbolic of a wider struggle purely because they were martyred in the revolution? Is it because of their intentions, you know, if they were politically involved, if they were in the wrong place at the wrong time? And he started the conversation purely because some of the families were critiquing revolutionaries in Egypt, and also some of the graffiti artists, I know Ganzir had something to say about it as well, for using the images. So using them in music, using them in arts, using them as revolutionary narratives. What do you think about that? Is that fair play? Do you use narratives of martyrdom in your lyrics? Are we going to see more of that?
I think you started seeing it in the early days of the revolution. I mean, Genzir's project. Genzir, by the way, is a very renowned street artist in Egypt. He does great stuff. If you walk around the streets of Egypt, you find all these really cool stencils. I think what Genzir was doing in the early days of the revolution, like putting up big murals, of the martyrs, like the graffiti and street art. I mean, to remind the people. I mean, as we speak today, a lot of people forgot, what we were going through. So imagine this going down, you're going out with your friends, and then you see that image. It's so powerful. It just reminds you, of what we were going through. People like Khaled Said, who is our, Sidi Bouzid, in a way. He is, yes, he was a very famous person because it was in 2010. And it was way before the revolution, you know what I mean? He was a prime example of police brutality. He was there at the wrong time, dealing with the wrong people. And he just got brutally killed, in public. And at the end of the day, they just, after the investigation of why he died, the cops blamed it on him, saying that he swallowed a pack of marijuana back, and that's how he died. Well, if you see his picture shared on Facebook the next day, you can't die from swallowing a pack of marijuana if your face is like, flat. He was stomped by the cops, kind of like that, famous American History X scene. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Yes, that's exactly what happened to him. So, in order to, you have to understand why these guys are, brought up martyrs. Yeah, basically, they deserve to be remembered by everyone.
They didn't need to die, but they died for us to be here right now.
I agree. I mean, I was encouraged kind of seeing Genzir's image of Khaled Said and Zamalek. Those images are really powerful. But I think Sam Monkey's question was more about those that have died, like Port Said recently. As there's been more martyrs and time has gone, there's been a heavy critique from some of the families about the use of their sons and daughters, some of whom weren't actively involved in the revolution, died because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. What do you think about that? That was more what I was asking about, the kind of...
it will happen. I mean, yeah, you might get mistaken. Because you have to understand how it was during the protests. Like, bullets were just flying all over the place. So, yeah, you might get mistaken by calling this guy a martyr, when in fact he wasn't. He was just passing, by Tahrir Square, and he wasn't there intentionally, but it happens, I mean.
Thank you guys. I think we'll have to wrap up here. I hope you all enjoyed today's concert and the event. If you want to know more about our artists and their work, please follow them on Facebook and Twitter.
Hazem, can I say one thing? Can I invite them to our show?
You always want to say one.
No, it's to invite them to our show on Friday. It's not about anything, but I'd like to just say that Deeb and myself will be performing on Friday. I wasn't on Facebook. I was actually trying to Google the information for you guys. It's at the Quad, which is near LSC, and it's a fundraiser for Philistine. And it'll be myself, Deeb, Logic, Mike Righteous, Lyricist Jin, Sanasino, Rafiq Ziadeh, and Tabernacle will be performing at the Quad near LSC. So please do come out. It's at 8 p.m. So, it's a... Sorry? Yeah, the student union and a Palestinian student group. Exactly, and it's called Refugee Rhythm. So we're raising money for Philistine, so each one teach one, reach one, tweet one. So please do come.
There's also more information about the upcoming events for OpenDemocracy. There is one called Translating the Revolution on March the 14th. I think it is on the website, if I remember correctly, yes? Anyways, thank you guys. Have a good evening. And see you all in the reception.
But I need to find the sound first.